Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. In Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, and Aaron Baines. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds and thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core, located at 113 Salem Street.
Welcome to the Good and Plenty podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Goodman, and this week we're going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to talk to my producer, Evan Valenti, and we're going to go through NBA preseason. Training camp starting up, so we're going to talk about a ton of topics. I'm going to give you my opinion on plenty of things. But first, today's show brought to you by Keeps. Go to Keeps.com/plenty right now and get a free month of treatment. That's a free month of treatment at Keeps.com/plenty. Remember, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, CLNS Media. You can find me at Goodman Hoops on Twitter and watchstadium.com. All right, so Media Day started Friday, and I was at the Sixers Media Day. But really, in essence, they started Monday with most of the league. And the most entertaining thing wasn't LeBron with the Lakers. It wasn't Kyrie with the Celtics. It was Kawhi Leonard. I mean, if you haven't seen this by now, Evan, Kawhi Leonard, listen, the guy, first of all, I've never really seen him smile, never mind laugh. And I don't know what the hell that was. What was that, a laugh, or what was this? I mean, you got to play this.
That was, this is the weirdest. This is the weirdest thing, I think. I mean, Kawhi's been through some weird stuff lately. I mean, the last year was just, again, weird. This is just adding on. Like, we all thought that Kawhi Leonard was a robot anyway, like built in a factory by Greg Popovich to stop LeBron. And then he got way better as, like, you know, things tend to happen with robots, right? And now he's just but he still has no idea how to be a human and interact with people. Like, this was wild. And Twitter, obviously, Jeff, did a really great job of correctly hammering Kawhi correctly. I thought it was pretty well handled by the internet.
It almost seemed like it was like a Milli Vanilli type thing. And it wasn't coming out of him. I'm like, what's going on here? I kept playing it over and over and over. And I played it for my wife, and I'm like, she didn't quite understand it at first, and then I had to give her the background. But, like, it just, like, would Toronto have traded for this guy if they had heard that first? It's insane.
I still would, but I get where you're going with it.
It's insane. I mean, honestly, it's the greatest thing maybe ever in media days.
How's that guy supposed to connect with his teammates when he laughs like that? Like, how? Like, if I were one of his teammates, does he ever really laugh at any of my jokes? Like, I just feel like this is gonna be a problem, I think, for Toronto.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry's gonna have trouble with this. I mean, honestly, they're gonna have trouble connecting, because if he ever does make a joke, and I want to know, like, have any Spurs ever heard him laugh like that, or is that like the first time he's ever laughed? But it really was remarkable. We may play it again. I mean, like, honestly, we may play it. The over-under on this maybe 10 times in this podcast. It's that good, Evan.
It's incredible. I mean, we really, again, it's the NBA, Jeff, is the gift that keeps on giving. Like, every couple of weeks, like, even during the deadest of dead time during the NBA, something always happens to, like, you know, just to wet the whistle for a couple more days. And this one, I mean, look, this is like literally day one of the NBA calendar, right? This is media day.
Well,
and we already have so much gold between, I mean, Kyrie's back to being philosophical Kyrie again. You have, again, LeBron in LA. You've had the great picture of Carmelo Anthony at Rockets media day looking like he doesn't really care right now. And then you have the Kawhi laugh, like that. All of it just almost too much content in one day, Jeff. It's hard to cover it all.
It is. And the big story leading up to media day, of course, was Jimmy Butler and basically his request to be traded, which is remarkable because I've known Jimmy a long time, and he didn't really. It wasn't the right fit, obviously, with Fred Hoiberg when he came to Chicago, because Hoiberg's all about offense and not about defense. And Jimmy's all about defense and toughness, so it didn't work there. So when he was reunited with Tibbs in Minnesota, I was like, all right, this is going to work. I mean, this is completely going to work, and it's going to rub off on Andrew Wiggins, who I've always felt was soft and played to the level of his competition. This is going to help Wiggins because he's going to see Butler, and he's going to have to play hard all the time. Well, that didn't work. It kind of backfired because Wiggins got too much money before he ever really did anything in the NBA, so he's decided he really doesn't ever need to guard. Butler's frustrated with not only Wiggins but Karl Anthony Towns, requests to be traded, and it's just an interesting scenario in a lot of ways. Minnesota is going to take a step backward no matter what happens. You know, you're not in a place of leverage right now if you're Tibbs. So you're probably going to get 50, 75 cents on the dollar for Jimmy Butler no matter what you end up doing. And Jimmy Butler is a guy that right now it hasn't worked in two locker rooms, so a lot of teams are going to be a little bit scared off by Jimmy. And again, I've known him a long time. I like Jimmy. But again, does he get along with everybody? I mean, he was close with D. Wade at the end of Chicago, and the rest of the team really went with Rondo, which tells you something, a lot of those young guys. So I don't know where this is going, but I don't think it's good for Butler. I don't think it's good. Well, maybe it is good for Butler, depending on where he ends up. But they could ship him to Sacramento, Evan. Who knows?
Yeah. I think it's great because I've been thinking this for a long time, the way you kind of phrased it. Like, at what point, Jeff, does this become about Jimmy Butler? Like, Jimmy Butler's never happy here, and he's not happy here. Like, at what point is Jimmy Butler kind of a pain in the ass to play with? Like, I understand that
we're at that point.
He's wide a certain way. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I mean, and I love like the competitive spirit of Jimmy is legendary, right? I mean, you watch him at Marquette. Those teams are all about that type of attitude under Buzz Williams at that time. Like that, Jay Crowder, a bunch of those guys were work hard, do all the dirty stuff. We'll grind it out every single possession and we'll win games that way. That's the way Jimmy is, and I love it. Trust me. But like maybe he's just not the easiest guy to play with. But the problem is when you look at what he's talking about, he kind of has a point.
That's the key, Evan. It's where do you go with this? Because again, if you played with Andrew Wiggins, I'm telling you, I watched him for so long. He's super frustrating because he is ultra talented. And everybody was like, oh, he's an elite defender back at Kansas and even in high school. And I'm like, I've never really seen this. Like, he should be an elite defender. Instead, he's like an average at best defender. And oh, by the way, like, he'll have some games where he puts up 25 or 30 and other games where he puts up 4. Oh, by the way, in the NCAA tournament and the loss to Stanford in the second round, he put up 4 points. So he scares the hell out of me. And now you're going to give Towns and Wiggins the keys to this franchise going forward, and I think they're going to be mediocre depending on again what else they can get. And so I got a couple trades that I kind of thought of with Jimmy Butler. Ready? You tell me if you like either one of these.
Fire it off.
He wants to be in LA, according to my sources. Now again, the Clippers are the team that's people have talked about in LA, but they don't really have enough to give for Jimmy Butler. What about this for the Lakers? Lonzo Ball, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for Jimmy Butler.
How much is Caldwell-Pope making this year? I mean, I think that balances out.
He's at
the
12.
Contracts need to balance out.
Yeah, it's about right. Pope's
right?
at about 12. Lonzo's at about 7. I think Butler's at about 20. So it would work money-wise. Would you do it on both sides? I think it's actually a pretty good deal because you get Lonzo to Minnesota. I still really like Lonzo Ball. I like him a lot.
Too much IQ there. There's just too much IQ there. He understands, like, as much as people want to, rank on Lonzo for his jump shot and the way it looked, right? The guy still has unbelievable basketball IQ. He's a good, maybe even great, but willing defender at that position. He's big for that size. He rebounds well. Yep. He transforms the way your team plays. And I'm curious what Minnesota thinks of him in that regard, but if that jump shot doesn't come around, that could be a real ugly deal for them. What does Minnesota want LeVar? I mean, we kind of have to talk about that.
Listen, nobody wants LeVar, but is it worth it for a team like Minnesota, a small market team, to
get somebody like that?
Yeah, and you've got Lonzo, Towns, Wiggins. Again, they're going to get 50, 75 cents on the dollar. That to me would be as good a haul as you're going to get. And if you're the Lakers, you go in LeBron as your point with Rondo, those two, Butler, Kuzma, Ingram, just versatile wings and a bunch of them. And I don't know. I mean, again, LeBron and
I don't
Butler,
mind it. I don't mind it. I don't mind. Like, I think that's the most the Lakers should even, if they're going to entertain the idea. I mean, I would think that they would. I mean, I wouldn't give a whole lot to get Jimmy Butler if he's probably going to leave there and is looking in L.A. already anyway. You know what I mean?
That's the thing is you
right.
If you're L.A. and you're saying, all right, we know we can keep him. We can offer him a
Right.
ton of money after this year. And again, I just don't think the Clippers have enough. I don't think Brooklyn has enough. Another team that I think would be interesting. How about this one? Phoenix has Milwaukee's, I think, first round protected pick next year, and I think it's protected like 1 to 3 and 15 or 17 to 30. Okay, what if you shuttle Josh Jackson in that pick for Butler and Phoenix?
Josh Jackson is such a Tibbs guy,
right?
Because that guy competes all the time. He just competes and again, there's another guy with a weird jump shot, but again, a guy that competes on both.
He's like a poor man's. He's a poor man's Jimmy Butler. That's what he is.
He could. All the way down to the hairstyle. All the way down to the hairstyle.
Yeah.
You could. I mean, I would probably, if I were Minnesota, I would prefer Phoenix's package there, just because. I mean, I like Josh Jackson's versatility a ton.
Yeah.
And
the first
over Lonzo.
Pick.
Yeah. And I think that's way more valuable. But Tibbs doesn't want he wants vets. He doesn't want young guys, so to speak. So that's kind of where KCP kind of falls into play. I like your Phoenix one there much better.
And imagine, I mean, Ayton, Booker.
Butler. Oh, man.
Ayton, Booker, Butler. Like, that's a pretty good core. And, does Jimmy leave after a year? Maybe. But again, if you're Phoenix, who I heard is not enamored with Josh Jackson, maybe they would pull something like that. Again, two hypothetical trades.
I just think you're going to end up in a situation where those guys don't work. I mean, what's funny? If you go back and listen to that, your interview with Jared Dudley, he talks about how hard Booker works in the gym all the time.
Yeah.
And that's, again, something that if you think about Jimmy in a sense, like what he's been complaining about, I worry about that maybe with Ayton, because such a young guy, you know him better than I do. But again, if you go back to that pod where again, Jared was just very complimentary. This is the first podcast I think you did.
Yeah.
Very complimentary of the work ethic of Devin Booker. I mean, that might be a much better fit for Jimmy if you're going to take a flyer somewhere. That might be not a bad idea. Yeah,
and Ayton, I mean, Sean Miller, his former coach at Arizona, raves about Ayton's work ethic this past year. And a lot of guys have. So I think, again, it's going to be the right team to have to take a shot on Jimmy, thinking they can keep him beyond the year. But, if you're a small market team, I think you kind of roll the dice. But there are some teams that don't even want to be in the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes, really, because
my question is,
they're worried about him.
What my question would be, I mean, the one team that I'm looking at, and I was going to factor this into the power rankings a little bit, but the one team I was looking at, and I don't know how they would do it, but Daryl Morey is so friggin' smart.
Oh, he'd take a shot. He'd take a shot.
He would absolutely take a shot, and he would find a way to make the cap work. And it's just the question I think would become for Minnesota is, what could they possibly offer me to make this worthwhile for me? But if you were, because that's the one thing about Houston.
I mean, it'd have to be Eric Gordon. You'd have to have Eric Gordon in there, and I'm not. You'd have to have a lot more than Eric Gordon. And I like Eric Gordon, but again, that's not going to be enough. You'd have to throw, and any pick you're going to throw in there is going to be a late first rounder. Where if you're Minnesota, in this deal, if I'm Minnesota, I want a player and I want a possible lottery pick. I got to have a possible lottery pick in there in order to do this trade.
I wouldn't count out Daryl.
No,
listen, he's shifty, man.
No doubt. Well, he's taking a shot on Dwight Howard. It didn't work. Then he took a shot on obviously Chris Paul, and it's worked so far. And Houston, to me, I think they're going to miss on this last one, which is Carmelo. But we'll see. And I know that gets into your next question.
I just think that we had everybody knows going into this season that everything is going to be about Golden State. Been in 4 straight finals. They have like the greatest team ever assembled. Everybody knows they're going to be really good. I think and we all can talk about the blue in the face, but we all kind of know what Golden State's good at. We've seen him play for 4 straight years, and Durant, obviously was a very easy fit on what Golden State wants to do. So we kind of all know that Golden State's going to be really, really, really good. I think the question to ask yourself is, has the rest of the NBA closed the gap even at all, even remotely? You look at Houston last year; they were just not shooting 0 for 27 from 3-point range in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals away from beating them and going on to the NBA Finals potentially here, or Chris Paul injury away from going to the NBA Finals and ending that run. I just want to know, in 2018, Jeff, are we in a better place in terms of teams going after Golden State, or are we nowhere better than we were last year? Because if that's the case, then you might as well just give Golden State the trophy again.
I thought the teams had closed the gap, but then I looked at it and I said, no. I think there's one team that's closed the gap, and that's the Celtics. And I think the Celtics are the clear-cut number 2 team on paper this year. And Houston's taking a step back just because, again, I think the loss of Trevor Ariza is going to hurt him. And I think, Carmelo is kind of subtraction by addition as much as anything else. I don't trust them defensively now at all. But, again, listen, KD he turns 30. Steph turns 31. As long as those dudes are healthy. Right? Draymond's going to be fine. Clay's Clay. And then they add Boogie. And people could say, all right, well, Boogie's coming back from a major injury. Fine. But Boogie at 75% is way better than anything that they've had. And I think Boogie understands that winning is the most important for him and his future. And I'm not sure he's going to be able to control himself, but I think the rest of those guys will help keep him in line when it matters, which is really postseason time. So I think Houston, again, took a step back. Golden State took a step forward. And the only other team to me that looks like they can compete and push Golden State is the Celtics. So if you want to say, has the gap been closed, I will say yes. For one team, with the addition of Gordon Hayward now, a new Jason Tatum, and Kyrie Irving back, with confidence from Terry Rozier, then I do think the Celtics can make a little bit of a run. But I still think there's a significant gap between a healthy Golden State team with a healthy DeMarcus Cousins and even the Celtics.
Yeah, I do think Boston is well equipped to handle Golden State. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it for 7 straight games in that kind of pressure-packed environment. Like, Kyrie's going to be the only guy that's really been in that environment. I do think that does matter. Yeah. When you get to that stage of play. Okay. I mean, being in a tight game of the NBA Finals in a game 7, having that experience already is massive. And Kyrie's the only guy with that.
Don't you think being in Game 7 against Cleveland with the NBA Finals on the line was and they didn't handle it that well, the Celtics.
Right.
Many Celtics didn't.
So, but I mean, and they're going to learn a little bit, and so was Brad. Brad's still also learning on the fly a little bit too. I mean, he is incredible. Don't get me wrong, but there are still situations where, he can get even better, and he'll be the first guy to admit that. But with Boston, I think they have exactly the team you'd want to try and beat them.
Sure.
And they have additions all over the place in terms of obviously Gordon coming back, Kyrie coming back. But you mentioned another year of development for Tatum, another offseason for Jaylen Brown, Terry Rozier, again, more confident than ever. They're getting Daniel Tice back. And I know that doesn't mean anything to the majority of people that listen to this podcast, but Daniel Tice would have helped out tremendously in a lot of the games in the playoffs for the Celtics. He ended up being a really valuable player for them. They have Aaron Baines. They have Morris Still. They can just kind of mix and match all across the board for Boston. But a lot of their internal improvements from the younger guys, I think, is what's really going to try and separate them from what they from. I think they could be an excellent team. And they can also be a pretty good team. But I think if they're going to be an excellent team, I mean, Tatum has to take that jump that we know he can take, and Jaylen Brown has to take the jump that we know he can take. And if those guys, all 5 of them, the whatever 5 you want to do, but the closing 5 of Kyrie, Brown, Tatum, Gordon, and Al, if those guys are what we think they're going to be, I do think Golden State is going to have a problem. And you can ask a lot of guys, and I tried to get this out of Michael Thompson one time. I said, what makes Boston always plays Golden State tough? Why? And he says, because in the fourth quarter, they execute, maybe not on the offensive end, but they always execute on the defensive end. And I thought that was interesting, and it was a good way to put that, because it seems like because you were at Media Day, Jeff, a lot of the stuff that Boston talked about focused primarily a lot on their defense and how good that's going to be coming up this year.
Yeah, Brad Stevens started with it because he knows they can score. I mean, like that's not going to be the issue with this team, especially in the first unit. You know, I mean, you got Kyrie, you got Tatum. I think Tatum's going to be their second best scorer this year. You had Hayward back, Jaylen Brown got better, and Horford. Those guys are going to be able to score. I mean, between the five of them, they're going to average, they're going to get 85 a game out of those five guys. And then you still got, Rozier, Marcus Morris, and Smart coming off the bench. So he knows. I mean, Brad's smart enough to understand if they're a top 5 defensive team in the league, they're going to be dominant and they're going to run away with the East. And they should be better defensively. They really should because, Hayward's a good defender, good team defender. It's going to take him some time, but Tatum was much better defensively than anybody thought in year one. And obviously Horford and Jaylen are good. And then you got Rozier, Smart, Marcus Morris that are all good defensively. So the one weak link of their top 8 guys is Kyrie. And it's hard if one guy's not guarding, it shows. So I think Kyrie's going to have no choice but to, and he got better even last year. He was way better defensively than he had been in Cleveland. For the last few years. And one of the things that I think the reason why is because in Cleveland he could coast and it didn't really matter that much. But I think, in Boston they're playing for something every game, especially last year. And I think they'll be doing it again this year because they're still out to prove they're the dominant team in the East where Cleveland had already done that.
We all know Boston's going to contend. I'm just looking for other teams too. And I've been kicking around a couple different ideas. Obviously, a lot of people are going to point to the Lakers because they have LeBron, and until LeBron doesn't, go to the NBA Finals or doesn't go to the conference finals, until he doesn't do that, you kind of have to assume he's going to do it. I think he's earned the respect at this point. But you look at West, I'm looking at some of these teams, and some people like Oklahoma City better than they were last year. They pick up, basically the same team, but they get rid of Melo. Get another year of development maybe for Jeremy Grant. They bring on Dennis Schroeder. They bring on Nerlens Noel. They have a couple of new pieces, but I'm not sure if that's going to really take them over the edge. In order for them to contend with Golden State, Jeff, Paul George has to play better, period, especially in the playoffs. Russ needs to be out of his mind. In that unit that we saw with Roberson and Adams and Russ and Paul George, that unit that was one of the top 3, top 5 defensive units in the league when they were playing together and healthy before Roberson went down, that team needs to show up every night. And if you're going to beat, Golden State, they kind of have the weird team defensively to kind of handle that because they have long guys on the wing in both Roberson and in Paul George to kind of slow down some guys. I mean, Russ is athletic as hell, and I still believe if he's really focused on that end of the floor, he can be a decent defender. I mean, we have Adams as a kind of a rim protector, a nice big there. I think they could be defensively a problem, but I don't think they'll score enough. I keep going up and down, and I'm trying to find another team out west that I really like, and I keep coming back to Utah. I know you think I'm crazy here.
I do. I think you're nuts. I think Utah. And I shouldn't say this because I'm the biggest Donovan Mitchell fan there is and have been for
I don't know.
years.
See, this is where I think you're not as big of a fan as I am because I'm all over Donovan Mitchell. I think he's awesome.
I do too, but again, what else do they have? I mean, Rudy Gobert is great defensively, but like Derek Favors is solid. Rubio's a good pass first point guard, but I think Utah overachieved last year, and I don't think they didn't add anything. Now they didn't subtract anything either. They got the same team basically that they had last year. But I think other teams got better, okay? Like the Pacers got better than a year ago, right? I mean, they lost Lance Stevenson. Okay, great. That's probably an addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
Tyreek Evans goes in for Lance, and then you add Doug McDermott, Kyle O'Quinn, and I think Aaron Holiday is a rookie. Drew Holiday's brother, Justin Holiday's brother, who I think could challenge for the starting point guard spot. And I love their toughness, Oladipo and Sabonis. I never thought Oladipo would be this. Never. But they got good, Miles Turner, Thaddeus Young. So I like Indiana. Oklahoma City scares me because the two pickups you mentioned, Schroeder and Nerlens Noel, both red flag guys that their teams couldn't wait to get rid of. Quick break from the Good and Plenty podcast to tell you today's show brought to you by Keeps. Hey guys, listen up. I'm guessing some of you have noticed recently some of your hair has magically disappeared, but you're not sure there's a real solution to your problem. Truth is, there's only 2 products on the market right now that are FDA approved to help you with your problem. And now, thanks to Keeps, those 2 products can be yours in just 5 minutes and will only cost you $1 a day. You'll never have to worry about hair loss again. I've used it for now the past 2 months, and my wife already said she's noticed a little bit of a difference. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully it keeps going in that direction. But get started with Keeps today. It's simple. Just answer a few quick questions, take a few pictures of your head, boom, you're all set. A licensed doctor reviews your info and recommends the right treatment for you. You never have to leave your couch. Sign up for Keeps today and get your free month free. All you have to do is go to keeps.com/plenty. That's KEEPS.com/plenty for a free month of treatment. Keeps, hair today, hair tomorrow. I would say to me, the other team, is probably Philly. I mean, probably Philly just because you've got the talent level there. Now, do I trust Philly? And I was there Friday, for media day. I sat down with Embiid. I sat down with Redick and Fultz. Redick was great because one of the things I asked JJ was, I kind of referenced the rivalry between Philly and Boston and how it was kind of back. And he looked at me and he's like, it's not a rivalry until we beat them. Like, it's not a rivalry. They beat us. And until we beat them, it doesn't become a rivalry. But I think the big thing is Embiid's got to stay healthy. And I just don't know how much confidence I have that he's going to be able to play 80-plus games or even 70-plus games, stay healthy for another year. And Fultz scares me. And if you got Fultz who can't make a shot out on the court a lot from the perimeter, and you got Ben Simmons who can't make a shot from the perimeter, that's 2 dudes that, again, you pack it in. And Embiid said to me, well, he doesn't need to make shots, meaning Fultz. No, that's not true. When you have Simmons out there.
What are you talking about? Jeff, you definitely need to make shots, Jeff. I think the only way to win basketball games is to make shots.
He was saying he can drive to the basket. He's so big, strong.
Now when they pack, look at this. Right. The Celtics beat them. I hate to make this like a Celtics-centric podcast here. The C's beat them by basically daring everybody. And even Embiid, they wanted Embiid to shoot threes that entire series because it took him away from the basket and he couldn't get any offensive rebounds. So, look, a lot of what Philly is going to end up doing, and I'm curious if there was any buzz around this. It is a little bit on Markelle. It was a little bit on Ben Simmons, but, there has to be – I'm not sure if they have – they had, Wilson Chandler? I'm not sure if they got better with outside additions. Like, they're banking on their talent already there, taking big steps. Look, Embiid is as talented as anybody in the league. I remember when the first time I thought he was going to be big time, it was against Iona. He Euro stepped from the free throw line. I've never seen any big in a college game Euro step ever, and he did it from the free throw line. And he'd been playing basketball like 3 years at that point. So I was like, this guy's gonna be unbelievable. Ben Simmons is as unbelievable as a prospect as you want outside of his 3-point shooting. He's just really, again, you want to talk about Lonzo understanding the game at a high level. Ben Simmons sees the game at a completely different level than 95% of the league.
How about this? So we're supposed to have one-on-ones, and we did. We had them with Embiid, Redick, and Fultz, and Rich Paul and CAA pulled Ben Simmons from most of his one-on-ones.
Oh, man, come on.
The day of. And I'm like, I've known Ben forever. Like, I broke his commitment to LSU back in the day.
Right.
He committed as a sophomore in high school. So I was just BSing with Ben before media day even started, where he's spending his off season and what he's been working on and everything like that. And then PR guy from Philly comes up to me right before media day started and says, yeah, Ben, just so you know, he's not doing most of his one-on-ones. Rich Paul at CAA pulled him from him. And I'm like, come on. Like he's in his second year. He comes up Rookie of the Year. And Embiid's doing every interview. He sat down with Rachel Nichols for a half an hour. He's terrific. Embiid is so so thoughtful in his answers. Ben Simmons has gotten a lot better in that regard. And I felt bad because, again, I think Ben would have liked to have done them. But again, you just do what your agent tells you to do. But it was interesting because, again, I think they've got the vibe that they're going to be very good. But I think even they understand that the Celtics are a notch above them, and they should because they lost to the Celtics a year ago without Kyrie and Hayward. So what else is supposed to go through their minds?
What was the buzz around Fultz's jump shot at Media Day?
So I asked him,
obviously a massive, massive story as we head into 2018.
Massive. And Fultz basically said, listen, it was all my shoulder injury. It became mental after that, but it was all my shoulder injury. And that's the only reason. It wasn't that I changed my shot and then this happened. It was my shoulder was bothering me. So when I came back, I couldn't really shoot the ball well. And, you know, he's
now, are we sticking with that? The story has changed like 4 times since it came out a year ago that he had all these problems. Like, I'm just trying to make sure we get the story straight for once.
Well, I think Brian Colangelo and Brett Brown weren't on the same page for it too.
Right.
And it was Keith Williams, his guy, who he grew up with. He was kind of a part of it for a while. So whatever it is, I really hope Markelle Fultz gets it taken care of because he is super talented. And a lot of people have already washed their hands of him and said, well, he's going to be nothing. Markelle Fultz, I remember when I interviewed him before he played a game at Washington, his freshman year, only year. I asked him, I said, like, what's your goal? What's your goal? He said, well, my goal is to be the best player that ever played this game. And I just sat there kind of laughing. I'm like, but that's the confidence this dude had, a kid who was cut from his varsity hoops team at DeMatha, I think, as a junior. So he's come a long way. He's got that chip in his shoulder again.
Absolutely. And he's working with the right guy. I mean, Hanlon is, the GOAT of trainers at this point.
Didn't he say,
the pudding.
Hey, didn't he say on a podcast recently that Fultz had the yips?
Yeah.
I mean, when you say that, like you're that's a pretty strong, that's like taboo to say somebody has the yips. So, not what you want to hear. But again, I think this is a team that at least they'll be fun to watch. We know Philly will be fun to watch. But I've got them behind. I'll tell you what, in my power rankings, Golden State's 1, and they should be for everybody. Boston's 2. They should be for just about everybody. I'll keep Houston at 3, and I got the Lakers at 4. I do. I mean, it's still LeBron. And I know some people have said, like, wasn't there a New York Times headline or something like LeBron, I don't know, are they a playoff team or something insane? I mean, like, I'll bet my house, as long as LeBron's healthy and he doesn't have a major injury, I'll bet my house that the Lakers are in the playoffs. I mean, there's just no way in hell that a Lakers team that's also got Lonzo Ball, one of the like you said, one of the guys with the highest IQs in the NBA, Brandon Ingram, who's super skilled. I mean, long and can shoot it. Kuzma's coming off a really good year. And then you roll the dice with a bunch of dudes, right? Rondo, Beasley, Lance, JaVale McGee. But, like, if one or two of them come through, that's all you need. I mean, LeBron's he's going to pull all those guys up a notch. They're better. They're more talented than the Cleveland team he was with last year. I know they're in the West, but I still I'll hitch my wagon to LeBron and all those dudes.
I agree with you. I'm just curious. Like, I just want to know how this is going to work because I think because it's LeBron, he's obviously going to make the playoffs. He's incredible.
We should hear from Kawhi on how this thing's going to work.
Always. But when it comes down to, we didn't play that nearly enough. What I'm gonna do after this is done, I'm gonna have to go back and just every once in a while splice it in just
plug
for
in
fun.
Kawhi. That's right. Just
always. Kawhi's always it's like, that, like the laugh track you hear in sitcoms all the time back in the day.
We need to use Kawhi on this podcast every week, at least once every week.
Anyway, get that back to LeBron here. I think I'm just curious to see how this works. I know they're going to make the playoffs because LeBron James is amazing, but I want to see if this plan works. Like, is LeBron going to play off the ball? Because I'm pretty sure the
He'll play
best
off,
play is when
he'll
LeBron
play
has the
on.
ball.
He'll play anywhere. Like, that's the one thing is I had a tweet a while ago that, like,
But how long does that last, Jeff? Like, eventually he's just going to touch the ball all the time. Like,
at the end of shot clock, yes, the ball's going to be in his hands. But the one thing with Lonzo is, yes, Lonzo's better when the ball goes through him, but he doesn't need it in his hands to dribble 10 times. He gets rid of it quick. He advances it as quick as anybody, and he does it in a way that isn't about him. It's just about, like, if a dude's open up the court, he's going to get him the ball. If not, he may dribble a few times, but I actually think he and LeBron are going to be really fun to watch. And the big question is going to be, how much has Lonzo tweaked his perimeter shot in the offseason? Because last year they couldn't tweak it. He had a good freshman year with UCLA. He shot a good percentage. So they couldn't go in last year before his rookie year and say, like, all right, you need to change your shot even though your mechanics suck. But now, after he didn't shoot it well last year, I think that was the focus as much as anything else. And I think the Lakers staff worked with him on it, and I can't wait to see the difference, because that's the one thing that'll hold Lonzo back. You know, just like Ben Simmons, but Simmons is such a freak of nature athletically in his quickness. Lonzo doesn't have that. He's got better. I think he's got better court vision than Ben Simmons, to be honest. But again, Simmons is 6'10" and long and super athletic and so fast from foul line to foul line. There aren't many guys his size that move like he does.
No, it's a rare specimen for sure. No question. I just want to, like, I want a lineup of, like, just the funniest lineup ever of, like, Lance, Rondo, LeBron, like, JaVale. Like,
Beasley. Don't forget Beasley.
Yeah, Beasley. I want, like, that lineup once. Like, Luke Walton, please. For
you'll
love
see it.
Of everything.
You'll see it. I'm telling you, that's the second unit, like, to some degree, or it could be. So you can absolutely see that. And I mean, imagine how frustrated. Think about it, how frustrated LeBron was with, like, J.R. Smith playing with Lance. Like, it's not that different.
You know who's going to be really good on that team? And I think you and SVP talked about it, but I'm also with you on this. Is Fee's going to be really nice on that team, because nobody's going to think about him at all, and he's just going to knock down open threes.
He seriously, I'll put Fee up as, like, one of the top. He might be one of the top 10 or 20 shooters in the NBA today, and he's got size.
That's far.
He's like 6'8", like, and he'll be
Real
wide
name,
open.
Jeff, come on now. You can't top 20 shooter in the NBA right now.
He will be wide open. That dude, I'm telling you, that dude can stroke it. Like, he can really, really shoot the ball. Maybe top 20 is too high before he's played a game.
Dial it back.
All right, I'll dial it back a little bit, but I think you're right. I mean, he's going to fit in if he can get on the court defensively. That'll be the key for him. So who's the team? And I got one. Who's the team that's probably the most, let's go with overrated. The most overrated team, in your opinion, is who?
Oh, man.
Going in. Or you can go underrated. If you want to start, either one. Underrated, overrated.
I guess I would say, like, underrated or overrated. I mean, I tend to, I have, like, obviously much different feelings on teams than everybody else does.
Yeah.
I'm just really curious about the Spurs, because I don't know what way to go with them. Is this a team that's going to rally around being like, oh, nobody thinks we're any good, and here comes DeMar DeRozan and Popovich gets, like, some weird season out of Paul Gasol, and Aldridge is great again, and DeJounte Murray takes the jump. Like, I'm not, or they could be really bad. Like, I just that's a team that I have no read on at all whatsoever. I have no clue.
They can't
I don't
be
know how
bad.
to deal with them.
They got Pop coaching them, and you got DeRozan and Aldridge. You can't be bad. They're going to make the playoffs again, but will they be great? Probably not. They'll probably be somewhere in that 6 to 8 seed, I would think, at the end of the day in the West. New Orleans is the one I worry about. I really do, because they're coming off this run where they sweep Portland. Everybody's like, oh, it's all about the Pelicans, and Anthony Davis is going to be happy, and now they had Julius Randle, and Drew Holiday had a good year. I don't know. I'm still not feeling them.
They still have Anthony Davis. Well, the one thing that's helping your case is, the health of Anthony Davis obviously is always kind of questionable, A. and B, like their entire season revolves around him being healthy for the majority of it. So I mean, you're kind of banking on maybe him not staying healthy the whole time and them taking a massive step backwards. But if he's on the court, I mean, the only guy everybody has the Giannis versus Anthony Davis debate. I just want everybody to know I'm on team Anthony Davis here. He is the best collegiate I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm only 28, so I'm not that old, but like I've never seen anybody like that. His stats in college are hilarious. And he's one of the only guys that has done the freshman be the best player in the league and actually take a young freshman led a team to the NCAA championship.
And he's all about team. Like that's the other thing with Anthony Davis. You never hear a bad word about him as a kid, as a player. The only thing you can knock him for is again his health. But if he's
right,
I just don't think they have enough around him. I mean, that's all. Like that's the wings just aren't good enough with the Pelicans, and they didn't really upgrade it. You know, it's like same thing with like Portland and their front line. All those teams, to me, all those teams like in the middle there, you've got major. You know, again, Giannis, does he have enough to help him with the Bucks? No. Detroit. Well, Detroit's got a couple good bigs with Drummond and Blake, but Reggie Jackson at the point, and their wings are, none of them proving anything. Luke Kennard, Stanley Johnson, Reggie Bullock. The Heat. You love Spoelstra. Whiteside's an enigma.
Do you think that's a legit Jimmy Butler destination? Because if they got Jimmy, it would be interesting.
Yeah, Jimmy wants to go. Like I think Jimmy just wants to go where he can be Hollywood Jimmy. Like I just
Miami would be a good spot for that.
Yeah, I think he'd do it for a year and be happy. I don't know if he'd re-sign there, but I think he'd think about it. Again, if you're Jimmy, like, all right, Miami playing for Spoelstra as opposed to Brooklyn or the Knicks, like Miami's closer to winning than both Brooklyn or the Knicks.
That's true.
So if I'm him, I want to win. That's what I'm saying. Like, actually, I really think. Like, it'd be interesting for the Lakers, not the Clippers. Like, the Clippers are still far away, and what do they have? What do they really have to trade? Tobias?
Gilgeous-Alexander? He wasn't put in an NBA game yet?
Right. I mean, I guess you could trade Gilgeous-Alexander and something else, but it's got to be something else that makes a lot of money, too.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
I don't know what the Clippers can really give in a deal that's going to be able to entice Minnesota enough. Again, and if you're Minnesota, are you pissed at Jimmy Butler? Like, is Tibbs going to make the call here, or is it going to come from above? And they're going to say, like, no, we're not going to send him where he wants to go. Right. With that, we just got him a year ago. No, we're going to send him Sacramento.
And if you're LA, like, you can't trade Tobias Harris from LA unless you put Boban with him, because that show. I don't know if you watched that show, the Boban and Harris show that's on right that they have on Twitter right now. It's legitimately hilarious.
A riot. That's right, hilarious.
It's amazing. I don't know who had that idea. Like, it just came out of nowhere. Like, it was a tweet like, should we do this? And everybody was like, yes, please. And then when it came out, I was like, this is way better than I anticipated. And they should make an entire season full of them. And I would watch every one of them multiple times.
Thanks again for joining us on another edition of Good and Plenty Podcast. Thanks to my producer, Evan Valente, for spreading some knowledge, helping me out here this week as we head into NBA preseason and training camps. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, CLNS Media. Please leave us your reviews, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. You can find me on Twitter at GoodmanHoops. WatchStadium.com. Thanks to Keeps for sponsoring this episode. I feel like this could go on and on and on forever. But come back next Tuesday, every Tuesday for an NBA podcast. And this week, this Thursday, our first College Hoops podcast. So you'll want to come in for that as well. So we'll see you next week. And thanks again.